What if I told you that you might already be ahead of 90% of all XRP holders in the world? And you don't even know it. Sounds crazy, right? But the data says otherwise. Most XRP holders never actually check where they stand globally. They look at their wallet, they see a number, maybe they remember the price they bought at, but they never look at the one thing that really matters, their rank. And today, we are going to break that illusion. Because once you understand where you truly stand on the XRP rich list, you will never look at your portfolio the same way again. Now, before we go deeper, quick reminder, this is not financial advice. This is based on publicly available blockchain data. Always do your own research. So let's start from the basics because this part is important. The XRP ledger is fully transparent. Every wallet, every balance, every transaction is visible to anyone in the world. There are no hidden accounts, no secret balances. Everything is recorded on-chain, and from that data, we get something called the XRP rich list. This is simply a ranking of all wallets based on how much XRP they hold. No names, no identities, just numbers. But here's where things get interesting. When you actually look at this data, you realize something shocking. The distribution of XRP is not what most people think. Most people believe that you need massive amounts of XRP to be considered ahead. But the truth is, the bar is much lower than you expect. Let's zoom out for a second. As of early 2026, there are around 7.8 million activated XRP wallets. But when you include people holding XRP on exchanges like Binance, Coinbase, or Kraken, the real number of holders jumps to somewhere between 18 million and 25 million people globally. Now think about that. Out of 8 billion people on Earth, only about 25 million own XRP. That's less than 1 in 300 people. Which means, if you hold XRP right now, you are already part of a very small group. You are early, but here's where it gets even more interesting. Being early doesn't just mean owning XRP, it means understanding where you stand among those who own it. So let's break it down step by step, because the real story starts at the bottom. The majority of XRP wallets hold very small amounts. We're talking about millions of wallets holding less than 100 XRP and millions more holding under 500 XRP. In fact, the average wallet, the median, sits somewhere between just 50 and 100 XRP. Let that sink in. Most people in the XRP ecosystem are holding very small amounts, and that changes everything. Because if the majority holds under 500 XRP, then anyone above that level is already ahead of most holders. And this is where the first big realization hits. To be in the top 50% of all XRP wallets, you only need around 500 XRP. That's it. At current prices, that's just a few $100s. Not a mansion, not a luxury car, just a small investment. But it already puts you ahead of half the entire network. Now ask yourself, do you have more than 500 XRP? If yes, you are already doing better than 50% of the world's XRP holders. And most people have no idea. Now let's go one step higher. To reach the top 25%, you need about 1,200 XRP. Still not massive, still not whale level, but now you are ahead of 75% of all holders globally. And this is where things start to feel different, because now you're not just early, you're ahead. And the deeper we go, the more shocking this gets, because the numbers you think are average are actually elite. And in the next part, I'm going to show you the exact number that puts you in the top 10% of all XRP holders. And trust me, when you hear it, you're going to question everything you thought you knew. So before we continue, I want you to do something. Pause for a second, check your XRP balance, and ask yourself, where do you think you rank? Top 50%, top 25%, or maybe even higher? We talked about how just 500 XRP puts you in the top 50%, and 1,200 XRP pushes you into the top 25%. But now, we are entering the level that most people think is out of reach, the top 10%. And this is where the biggest shock comes in, because to be in the top 10% of all XRP holders in the world, you only need around 2,300 XRP. Let me say that again. Just 2,300 XRP puts you ahead of 90% of all XRP wallets globally. Not 10,000, not 50,000, not some impossible number, just 2,300. And at current prices, that's roughly around $3,000. That's the price of a mid-range phone or a few months of saving. But it puts you in a position that most people will never reach. And this is the moment where everything flips. Because a lot of people watching this right now already have more than 2,300 XRP, but they never realized what that actually means. They thought they were average, when in reality, they were already in the top 10%. And once you understand that, your mindset changes because now you're not chasing the crowd, you're ahead of it. But let's not stop there, because the deeper we go, the more exclusive it becomes. Let's talk about the top 5%. To reach the top 5% of XRP holders, you need around 8,000 XRP. Now, this is where things start separating casual holders from serious investors. At current prices, that's around $10,000 to $11,000. For many people, that's not easy. It requires commitment, it requires belief, it requires patience. And that's exactly why so few people reach this level, because most people don't hold long enough, or they sell too early, or they never accumulate enough. But those who do enter a completely different tier. They are no longer just participants. They are positioned. Now, here's something even more interesting. Globally, the average person doesn't even have $10,000 in savings. So just by holding 8,000 XRP, you are already doing something that most people on Earth never do. You are concentrating wealth into a single high conviction asset. And whether that turns out to be right or wrong in the future, it puts you in a rare category. Now let's go higher, the top 2%. This is where things start getting truly elite. To reach this level, you need about 23,000 XRP. That's over $30,000 at current prices. And here's the key point. There are only about 150,000 wallets in the entire world that hold this much. Out of millions, out of tens of millions of holders, only a tiny fraction reach this level. And this is where you start seeing a pattern. Every step up gets exponentially harder because fewer and fewer people are able to commit at that level. Now let's talk about the top 1%, because this is the level most people dream about, but very few actually reach. To be in the top 1% of XRP holders, you need around 46,000 XRP. At today's prices, that's around $60,000 to $65,000. And there are only around 75,000 wallets globally that meet this level. Think about that. 75,000 wallets out of millions, out of a global population of billions. That's not just rare, that's extremely rare. And here's the part most people don't understand. This level isn't just about money, it's about time. Many of the people in this tier accumulated XRP years ago at prices that seem unbelievable today. They held through uncertainty, they held through crashes, they held through the SEC lawsuit, and now they are sitting at the top of the distribution. But here's the twist. Even this isn't the top, because above the top 1%, there's a world that most people never even think about. A world of ultra whales, a world where the numbers start becoming hard to even imagine. We are stepping into a level of wealth that most people will never see. The ultra tiers, the top 0.5%, the top 0.1%, and even the top 0.01%. And this is where the numbers start to feel unreal. Let's start with the top 0.5%. To reach this level, you need around 83,000 XRP. At current prices, that's well over $100,000. This is not casual investing anymore. This is serious capital. This is conviction at a level that most people simply don't have. And because of that, very few wallets ever reach this tier. Now let's go even higher. The top 0.2%. To be here, you need just under 165,000 XRP. Now we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is where the line between retail and high net worth individuals starts to blur. This is where institutions, early adopters, and deeply committed investors live. But now, we go into the level that almost no one reaches, the top 0.1%. There are only a few thousand wallets in this category, and each one holds at least around 295,000 XRP. At current prices, that's approaching $500,000 in a single asset, in a single wallet. Let that sink in. Because this is not diversification. This is a bet, a massive bet. And then we reach the final tier, the top 0.01%. This is the peak, the absolute top of the XRP rich list. And here's what it takes to be there. Over 3.85 million XRP. At today's prices, that's over $5 million in one wallet. And here's the shocking part. There are only around 700 plus wallets in the entire world at this level, not thousands, not tens of thousands, just a few hundred. But now comes the most important question. Who are these wallets? Are they individuals? Are they secret whales controlling the market? Or is there something else going on? And this is where most people get it wrong. because when you hear that the top wallets control huge amounts of XRP, it sounds like centralization. It sounds like a few powerful players dominate everything, but the truth is more complicated. Or most of the largest wallets do not belong to single individuals. They belong to exchanges, platforms like Binance, Coinbase, Uphold, and others. These wallets hold massive amounts of XRP, not because one person owns it, but because millions of users store their XRP there. It's pooled, combined, aggregated. So when you see a wallet with billions of XRP, you're not looking at one whale. You're looking at an entire ocean of users. And that changes everything because it means the actual ownership is more distributed than it appears. Now, yes, there are still whales. There are still large holders. But the idea that XRP is controlled by a few individuals is not entirely accurate. And this is where things get even more interesting, because in recent years, something unusual has been happening. Dormant wallets, wallets that had not moved for years, suddenly started waking up. Some of these wallets hadn't moved since 2017 or 2018. Think about that. Years of silence. And then suddenly, activity, transfers, movements. Now here's the key question. Were they selling or were they buying? And according to on-chain analysis, most of these movements looked like accumulation, not distribution, meaning the people who held XRP for years, through crashes, through lawsuits, through uncertainty, are not exiting. They are repositioning. They are preparing. And that sends a very powerful signal, because when experienced holders, when early adopters, when smart money is accumulating instead of selling, it tells you something about their expectations. Now combine that with another trend. The mid-tier wallets, the top 20 to top 100 range, are slowly spreading out, becoming less concentrated, while the largest wallets remain stable, holding strong. And this pattern has a name. It's called network resilience. It means the foundation is holding. It means the core holders are not leaving. And in markets, that matters more than hype. But now we need to connect all of this to the one thing everyone cares about: price. Because all of this data, all of these rankings, all of these tiers only matter if they tell us something about where XRP could go next. And in part 4, we are going to break that down. We're going to talk about supply. We're going to talk about demand. We're going to talk about institutional money and why the available XRP supply might be much smaller than people think. And most importantly, we're going to do the math. Real numbers, real scenarios, showing exactly what your XRP could be worth based on where you rank today. So before we move on, ask yourself this. Are you closer to the top than you thought, or still on the way there?